One of my favourite parts of doing this YouTube channel is getting the opportunity to reach out and connect with other people, other psychonauts, and just swap stories and swap experiences. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you today. So yesterday I had an absolutely brilliant chat with a guy called Jonas Rosen. He's a fellow YouTuber, fellow psychedelic YouTuber who runs a channel called Cosmic Consciousness with Jonas. And I've been a fan of his channel, and he reached out to me and suggested that we do some kind of collaboration together. And so we decided to get together on Skype, just have a conversation, just chew the fat, and I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to share this with you guys. In this, we're talking primarily about DMT, but also ayahuasca, and a little bit of like sort of psychedelics in general, about the sort of psychedelic sort of community, and also our own kind of like aspirations for contributing to that community and adding more content and adding our own ideas into the mix. So anyway, without further ado, here's the conversation I had with Jonas. It's going to be the first of a few, and we're going to do it again next week. We had such a good time doing it, so I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, I bring you Jonas Rosen of Cosmic Consciousness with Jonas. Enjoy. Let's just jump straight into it, mate. I think actually it might be interesting just to talk a little bit about what we're doing here in terms of us as like psychonauts doing stuff on YouTube.
Yes.
We sort of talked a little bit last time about this like a psychedelic community on YouTube, and I think this is something we're both sort of interested in. And the thing which came to my mind, which I was really excited about this conversation, when I started doing my first videos on YouTube, I had this idea in my head of having like a kind of like a Psychedelic Avengers, like a team of like awesome people just around the globe.
We're saving the world.
This is it, man. We're starting here. As Avengers assemble. So yeah, I thought this might be this could be the start of something like that. You know, I've had a chance to connect with like a few awesome people, and I think it would be, I'm just thinking out loud here, but yeah, if we could get something with like, 4 or 5 of us sort of in a room and chewing the fat, I think this could be a goal for the future and really build up this psychedelic community on YouTube. But we had a talking point based around sort of DMT and our sort of experiences with DMT, whether it's with like smoke DMT or ayahuasca. So I thought let's get into a bit there. And This is actually quite close to my heart at the moment, because mainly I was actually at a face-to-face meeting group last night where it was a kind of like an integration group.
And nice.
People were like sort of talking about their own sort of experiences with all different psychedelics. And one topic came up. It was basically, there were some people who were very heavily into plant medicines. Some people were very heavily into like sort of, research chems and stuff like that. And one, we're talking a bit about DMT, and you're saying there's the sort of the general opinion of that group was that there's no therapeutic benefit to DMT. It's awesome. It's like super fun, but like no therapeutic benefit. Now that's different to my own experience. I've actually had some, I would say this whole journey that I came on started off from smoked DMT, and I had some pretty immediate benefits to it. I'm not sure where exactly I am in terms of like, if this is like a healing experience in the same way that ayahuasca is, but certainly there was some stuff changed very quickly, like in a positive way, fairly much overnight with me. And I thought I just wanted to put that, to you, like, what's your own take there? Is DMT, do you think, is it just super awesome cosmic roller coaster fun, or do you think is there something there that's like beneficial for us?
Excellent question. And really. And I want to say to begin, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to connect again. I'm a huge fan of everything that you're doing and all the work that you've shared with the world so far. And Psychedelic Avengers sounds fantastic. I'm totally into that. I do actually think that there is some very legitimate truth to this idea that these plant medicines are helping humanity save itself from itself. Like, we need a mass shift in consciousness to face the problems that the issues that we're facing in the world right now. Quite frankly, I don't think we could do it without the plants. I think that we need more than just clever politics. We need more than just external changes in the outer world. We need a deeper inner transformation in the human collective, the collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And psychedelics are not the only tool, but they are easily one of the most powerful and profound tools. And I spent a pretty ridiculous amount of time thinking about DMT and ayahuasca as is. So it's a pleasure to be here talking about it. To your first question, this is a really, really good question. Is there any therapeutic benefit or potential to pure smoke DMT? There's no doubt that obviously ayahuasca has immense, extraordinary therapeutic potential in treating a whole range of mental health issues and mental illnesses. DMT, I would agree with you that there's less therapeutic potential there. I would say that I have heard on a number of occasions that it has been absolutely like incredibly healing, like treatment-resistant depression, decades of depression cured after a single high-dose experience, a single breakthrough experience with DMT. What I will say is proceed with caution because this is an incredibly powerful I would say this is the most rapid and intense shift in consciousness that is possible through I to be fair, I haven't tried 5-MeO DMT, so my knowledge is strictly around NN-DMT, but I have heard of miraculous therapeutic benefits, but I would say those are few cases. I would, my inclination or my impulse would almost never be to recommend, if someone is looking strictly for a therapeutic healing experience, I would be much more quickly recommend either ayahuasca or psilocybin, or even something like ketamine or MDMA. I mean, there's so many factors that it's impossible to really say, like, to give just a steadfast rule. There are general guidelines, and I'll say that because DMT is such an intense and profound experience and an awesome experience, in some situations it can be very destabilizing. Like if you don't have I don't even know what it is, but it's like some inner resilience,
fortitude,
right?
I think it is.
Yeah,
It's just inner fortitude. Yeah.
Exactly it. If you don't have some level of fortitude and resilience in the face of, like, when the boat really gets rocking, because DMT has the tendency to, like, totally disrupt your understanding of life and existence. I mean, that's how it was for me. It was like but that's why it was so life-changing, so revolutionary in my life, was because it just opened my mind to such a incredibly more vast picture and understanding of life in the cosmos, and at the same time just like totally knocked down this house of cards idea that I understood this existence. Like,
yeah, it's humbling. It's a humbling experience. It just, yeah, it absolutely. I had a very similar kind of thing. I was just super thought that I knew everything. You know, I knew my place in the world. I thought I knew drugs. I thought I knew the universe. I was like sort of very cut and dry. And then this thing just pulls a rug out from under you. And it is kind of destabilizing, like you mentioned, but it's also like incredibly liberating, because now the universe is in front of you to be rediscovered, and it's just full of wonder. And it's,
True.
But yeah, you can imagine that for some people that is like a step too far almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, beautifully said. Yeah, it did. That's really what it was for me too. It just filled me with so much wonder and intrigue, where I realized that this physical universe, as vast and infinite as it is only the tiniest tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to life than what meets the eye. And for me personally, like, I've over dozens of experiences with DMT. Almost all of them have been overwhelmingly positive and even euphoric and filled with love. But I also have, on a couple occasions, had some really difficult experiences with DMT. And it's very much worth mentioning that, as heavenly and liberating as this experience can be, like, a direct encounter with divinity, with the infinite source of life itself. It can also feel very much like a descent into hell, literally. Like,
so have you had that? Have you had like a typical like bad trip experience on DMT, or was it just there was something in it that was a little kind of disturbing, but then it kind of moved on, or was it just the whole character was just bad?
That's the thing. It was deeply disturbing. It wasn't necessarily scary, but it painted an image of human existence that was a little bit disturbing. And I don't always take these trips at face value. Like, this is another point that I think would be interesting to discuss later on, is like, is there some truth or reality to these experiences, or are these just like chemically induced hallucinations in the mind? Personally, I feel very strongly that anyone who says they're just chemically induced hallucinations has not tried this for themselves. But I don't always consider these experiences to be 100% true. But I mean, the reason I said that is because this disturbing experience, it kind of felt like I was getting these like downloads or these new insights about how some sort of, again, this sounds kind of wild, some sort of extraterrestrial beings, or even extra dimensional beings, like extra dimensional intelligence, was kind of like overseeing human life on Earth, like almost as though human life on Earth was like an experiment by these higher intelligence beings.
Oh my God,
yeah. And I mean, that's kind of conspiracy theory thing, whatever. I mean, again, like, I don't buy into it 100%. Do I close myself off from that possibility? No, not whatsoever. I mean, the thing is that these experiences do feel very just tangibly real somehow. It feels like, it doesn't feel like a hallucination. It feels like some fundamental truth is being revealed to you, like you're in an expanded state of awareness. But that was very like, it was jarring to see that. It was confusing to see that. And in a way, yeah, it was like, just something about the experience had this dark tone to it. And again, just to tie this back to the mental health piece, this is where that fortitude and that resilience and that ability to integrate comes in, is essential, because like, this can really disturb your everyday routine. You know, like, you're going to work, you're trying to pay the bills, you're taking care of this and that and the other, and like, if it can just fundamentally disrupt all of that in a very destabilizing way, unless somehow you have like this capacity to navigate that experience, or even if you have like social support. Like, I think my final note on the mental health thing will be proceed with caution. And if you are interested in experimenting with DMT as a mental health solution, please do it with at least one person around you to support you, who really knows what they're doing and who you can really trust. And also, I would encourage you to try to start with, I would encourage starting with either psilocybin or ayahuasca before DMT as a mental health solution. But anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. I personally wouldn't recommend it to someone as a mental health solution. And I think to sort of tie it back to what we're talking about with like the healing stuff, it's my experience, and it seems to be the experience of other people I've talked to, that like, if you've got some kind of deep trauma or something that you know you are looking to heal from, then that's not where I would say, yeah, go and smoke some DMT, and because I think it's so rapid and it's so just bizarrely bonkers that I don't know if you can sort of fully work on those kind of traumas in that space. But I think what it certainly did for myself was it worked on stuff I didn't even know needed doing. And this kind of ties into what a lot of sort of psychedelic researchers have talked about when they talk about the mystical experience, and like, you know, how it's got these amazing success rates for getting people to quit smoking and stuff like that. And they didn't even know they were trying to quit smoking. They just kind of like, I just don't even want these cigarettes anymore. And that's how it was with me. At the time when I got into DMT, I was having pretty extreme panic attacks. And I just kind of compartmentalized off. It was like, okay, this is that part of my life's annoying. This is fucked. Completely different track. Let's try this DMT thing. Had a few DMT experiences, which part of my panic attacks were being triggered by like this overbearing fear of death that I was having. And yeah, I just got shown this, I was in this like hyperdimensional cosmic hub. These, and like when I was laughing before when you were talking about the experience, it was because I've had that exact same experience myself, so it was just very familiar what you were saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just kind of explained by this like cosmic sort of consciousness that you came in through that door, you're going to go out through that door, and it's fine, it's all fine, so don't worry about it. And I came out of that DMT trip like 10 minutes later, panic attack free. It was just gone, and my life would just like would turn over. So, and now that just happened. I didn't ask for it. I didn't go. It wasn't an intention. It just happened. I also managed, I cut out. I was the amount of alcohol I was drinking just cut right out. The amount of chocolate I was stuffing in my face just dropped right down. I lost like 15 kilos. So all these kind of benefits came, but I never asked for it. I never went looking for it. It just changed me. It just changed me like for the better. So there is something there that's healing. But yeah, I would agree that like, if someone came to me just saying, I was abused as a child, or, I'm dealing with intense grief, I wouldn't say to them, well, smoke some of this and this will fix your problems. I would be recommending like sort of the ayahuasca sort of route, like a much more intense thing where you can put your intentions there. And
yes,
and
I mean, it's amazing what you just described, and yeah, I it's incredible how this works. I have come to see, in my perspective, that it's almost like there's an intelligence to these sacred substances, like an infinite wisdom, like the infinite wisdom of life itself, like that same force that holds all the trillions of cells in our body together, that same force that has driven the evolution of the universe from the Big Bang to this, like that is like concentrated so powerfully in the psychedelic experience. And the reason I say that is because almost every single entheogenic experience I've had in my life, it's almost like the plant medicine is serving up the exact experience that I need to confront and navigate in order to come out on the other side as a more liberated, more awakened, more healed, and happier and better person. And yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that like these challenging experiences there's like so much to be gained and learned even from these more difficult, challenging experiences. Almost always there's a valuable lesson to be learned through that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something we should get into later, in like sort of the whole thing around what was called a bad trip, because I kind of lean more towards the thing that yes, there are challenging trips, there are some absolute hell, and I think sometimes when you're looking to heal from those kind of things, that's the price. That's the price is you're going to have to go through a difficult experience. But just I wanted to come back to something you just mentioned about the kind of like the spirits that's within these or seems to be within these substances, because the flip side of that, and I'm sure you've heard it a bazillion times, and I've heard it a bazillion times. You get some very rational sort of textbook sort of science guy who will tell you, no, this is just chemicals, acting on your brain. And that's even weirder, right? The fact that the only difference between me sat here like in my office, in reality, and being in direct communion with hyperdimensional alien entities is a few chemicals. That's like, and all the meaning and emotion and just awesomeness that comes with that. That makes so even less sense than the idea that there's a spirit within these things. It's.
None of it makes any sense.
No, I don't know if I want it to be honest.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way before. Yeah,
but it's like because if all it is this, if you go for like the hyper science route, then it's just a chemical switch in your brain. So it's like reality, bonkers land, and that's it's yeah, that even, I mean, how would we even evolve that mechanism? You know, if you go the hard sort of Darwinian route, that everything that we have evolved is, you know, very lean. It's all for a purpose. There's no kind of, you know, there's no extra bits on us. Everything gets trimmed off. So
Right.
why would we evolve this mechanism within our brains for just experiencing what some people would call insanity? You know, it's
Right. Well, it's a fascinating point of discussion, because I mean, again, from the purely scientific route, if anyone wants to go that route, there's also this really fascinating mystery of why is DMT naturally occurring in the human organism, and it's not only endogenously produced by the human body, it's also found universally throughout nature in a huge variety of plant and animal species. Like, apparently common grass has trace amounts of DMT in it. Why is that? There's no, like, from this Darwinian perspective, there doesn't seem to be any like comprehensible reason as to why that is. And there's an interesting quote by Dennis McKenna, the brother of Terence McKenna, who I don't know the exact quote off the top of my head, but he's talking about how people who dismiss DMT and other psychedelics as just a drug experience forget that every waking moment that we have is a chemically mediated process.
Yeah.
Every waking moment that we have essentially is a drug experience. And so who are we to say that this experience or this state of consciousness or this set of chemical neurological conditions is more valid or more real than any other one? You know, so it's interesting.
Yeah. I just, there's something else that you mentioned earlier. I think it would be good to come back to is the topic around truth, the literal truth of the experience. So my sort of take on this is, I don't think you should ever take these kind of visions as literal truth. I always think and this is kind of what the shaman that I work with have always sort of reinforced me. Always look for the meaning. So, you know, if for instance, let's say you had a vision of a child, then this doesn't necessarily mean that like that is your literal child from the future. You're going to have a boy and it will be blonde or whatever. You know, it could just mean, you know, this is perhaps you're ready to become a parent. You feel like, you know, this is something or it's your inner child trying to speak to you. You know, so there's kind of a meaning there to look for, rather than a sort of a literal thing.
Yes.
What's your sort of take on that?
Honestly, I think you nailed it in a lot of ways. I very much agree with what you say. I think I don't always take these experiences at face value. I do think that almost always there's some deeper meaning or some metaphorical, like, this is what I've noticed in traversing the DMT realms on a number of occasions, that there is this like symbolic language, like different images or different experiences or encounters in the DMT realms they're like communicating a message. It doesn't mean that you're actually meeting some sort of extraterrestrial, extra dimensional being. It's possible, but it's not 100% like factual that is happening. And yet there's still some meaning or something being exchanged in that interaction, you know? So that's what's of significance, in my opinion. I think that it's also like any waking moment, there's a spectrum between going from like more towards illusion or hallucination and more towards like a reality or objective truth. And it's a really difficult kind of idea, because ultimately this is going to the deeper philosophical question of what is real, like what is true, what is truth. But just taking that kind of like superficial definition of either moving towards like illusion or towards reality, I think that a DMT experience can take you in either direction. I don't know. It is very fascinating because in a lot of circumstances, there is this intense feeling of reality or like veracity to the experience.
More real than real. The more,
yes,
yeah.
That's a very commonly reported feature of the experience. And this is something that like people who say this is just like a chemically induced like drug experience in the mind, this is the thing that they haven't tasted for themselves, I think, is this intense subjective feeling of reality or truth to the experience. And again, it is subjective, so that's not proof of anything. But another point that's really interesting is how much consensus there is about the nature of this experience. From all over the world, from people in all different social, religious, cultural backgrounds, there is an incredible amount of consensus about the core features or the core characteristics of this experience. For example, I mean, particularly with the breakthrough dose, it's just about universal that people are reporting these kind of out-of-body experiences where they're moving through a tunnel or a portal, breaking through, emerging in some sort of alternate realm or dimension of existence, some sort of transcendent realm of existence, encountering beings there, reports of machine elves and different entities and stuff like that. There's a huge amount of consensus here. And just to open up the conversation even further a little bit, if you bring in near-death experiences, if you bring in astral projection, astral travel, out-of-body experience, if you bring in like mystical experiences in general, mystical experiences have been reported all over the world, all throughout human history, and many religious scholars argue that these are actually the very core, like the core essence, the fundamental truth are these mystical, these direct encounters with divinity, which is the mystical experience. So like the common characteristics around the mystical experience are, for example, oneness, feeling of dissolving into cosmic unity with all of life, transcendence of space and time, a feeling of like a noetic sense that there's some truth or reality to this, a feeling of profound sacredness and love and liberation. All of these things are reported by the greatest spiritual and religious visionaries from all throughout history, from Buddha to Jesus. They all agree on these same core mystical insights, all of them. And so what does that tell us? That a significant, certainly not everyone, but a significant portion of people who are experiencing DMT are reporting these exact same characteristics and qualities. And the overwhelming majority of people who experience near-death experiences are there. It's almost as though they're all describing these same key spiritual insights, these same key spiritual truths. And so for me, that gives more credence. Again, this isn't proof, but it's building a evidence base, right? To like to try to begin to make sense of this question. All of that consensus again, from all over the world, from all throughout time, for me, that's very compelling evidence that there is some in some way that we can't quite understand, probably there is some truth or reality to these experiences. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think there's another aspect which I think is fairly obvious but gets lost in these conversations, which is just all those things that you just described, those feelings of oneness, and another word I'd throw into that mix there is communion. This feeling of communion with something greater than myself.
Yes.
But I think the thing that's, like I say, seems very obvious is how desirable that state is. So when you are there, this is all the euphoria in the world just happening in all at the same time in sort of forever. And it's not body euphoria like MDMA. It's just the joy of existence. And, and this is when people are talking about, particularly when you use the words like a spiritual experience, and some people start getting a bit pissy about that word because then it's like it's not sciencey because you're talking spiritual. But there is something built into us as human beings that this state is desirable. It's within us. The wet work is within us for this state to appear, and when it appears, it is incredibly desirable. You want to be back there. You want to be as close to that moment as you can for the rest of your life. So, and this is kind of, I think, what's lost somewhere in, particularly with a lot of like modern religions and stuff, where they're on some kind of spiritual quest. They're trying to get somewhere, but it's almost like they've not had the full taste of what's sort of possible here. And then similarly, like the very diehard sort of science skeptics are talking about this as like, it's all we want to do is, map the universe and map the atoms and stuff like that. And it's like, no, there is something else there. There is boundless meaning that can just change your life forever within this experience, and you've just got to sort of go for it. And it's a tricky one to describe. It's, we can sort of sit and have a dialogue about it and nod our heads because we've been through it, but to somebody else we sound like lunatics. Which is
no. But honestly, like, I just want to applaud, because that was that's a good point, and that was very well said. And like, spiritual Avengers. Spiritual Avengers team, that's all I know. Well said. That's such a good point, that like sometimes I describe it to people. There was one of these experiences in particular that was really just like this feeling of total ego dissolution. Like, there was no longer any boundaries to my being. I was no longer Jonas. I was just this pure awareness, but I was more myself than ever before. And it felt like, the best way to describe it is, it felt like a raindrop hitting the ocean and just like splashing down in the ocean. And instantly this one little raindrop is unified with the entirety of the ocean. And yes, this is so true, that it's an experience that is euphoric beyond euphoric. It's so saturated with unconditional love. Like, it felt like, sometimes I describe it to people like, it felt like I had just found out that I won the lottery 1,000 times over, like on a hyper-dimensional scale. It felt like there's nowhere else to go from there. There's nothing else to do. There's nowhere else to get to. You're home. You've made it. Like, this is what the heart longs for. It's like total wholeness, total I don't know. So what does that say? That is built into us. It's almost like our entire lives, somehow, without even knowing it, we're going this way and that way, trying to find that experience of wholeness and unconditional love and just total completion, where we've made it. There's nowhere else to get to. We're there. We're here. And so what does that say? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, man. I think it might come back to what you were saying earlier about, with DMT just being this kind of this substance that's everywhere. He talks about it being in grass, in sort of animals. You could pretty much walk out into any forest, and if you gathered enough material, you could, compound it, get it down to something you could get high from. And it's always had this, the one of the phrases that got kind of thrown around with DMT was the God particle. And I think probably a more accurate one is like the life particle, because that's how it seems to me. I've had experiences where, again, when you were talking about being in this kind of like experimental room, I was in this, what I would call like a sort of a hyperdimensional sort of chat room. Basically, it was kind of like the AOL chat room of the 97th dimension, and all life was just there, represented in some way. And the dialogue I got, clear as day, absolutely, like as clear as we're talking now. It was explained to me that that life is just so vast and so different and so dispersed through the universe that like normal methods of communication just fall apart. So you need some kind of like hyperdimensional way to communicate. And that's what this DMT realm is. It's a place for bees and grass and humans and aliens just to sort of meet as consciousness in one place and just communicate. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is and it just made so much sense. And that just comes into something else I wanted to bring up when we talk about the sort of the vividness of these experiences,
Yes.
and how the symbology and stuff that comes up. I think this is something that for the people who've not experienced it, it's very hard for them to grasp, because the stuff that you see is so clear and so real, and so it's not mushy. Like people tend to think of, you take acid or something and the walls are melting and it's all, things get mushy. But the MTA is not like, it's hyper real. And
yes.
Then when you start seeing these things like, ancient pyramids on Mars and sort of, the unspoken language of some other world, and it's just being beamed directly. It's so, I can't think of another word for it. Just so vivid and potent that it's
visceral.
Yeah, how can this be just some kind of like, this is not some kind of malfunction. This is like it's encoded into me somehow. These symbols and language, and everybody seems to be seeing the same thing and talking about the same kind of messages from these beings and these architectural structures that seem, it's so these archetypes are so common that it just seems to me this is not some kind of brain malfunction. There is some kind of structure here or some pattern.
The feeling is that when you arrive, this is really through the DMT breakthrough. Like, you have to have a sufficiently high dose to have these sort of hyper real, hyper vivid experiences, and they're commonly referred to as a breakthrough because, again, it feels like you have quite literally temporarily left this lifetime, this reality. You've temporarily left it behind and broken through into some sort of alternate realm or dimension, some sort of transcendent space. And it feels like wherever you have arrived, this is a place, like, it's hard to put this stuff into language because, it's not really like a physical place, but it feels like you've arrived in a place that exists. It coexists with this reality. Like, it exists parallel to this reality. So it has its autonomous existence. It's not just hallucinated in the mind. It's like you go there and it's just going on, like everything is happening, like, and it continues happening, like when you come out of the trip and when you go back next time. It's like you like there were some of these cases, it felt like I was in some sort of hyper-dimensional city is the best way to put it, like filled with all these creatures, with all these beings. It was like they were all just going about their daily routine. Like, they were just doing their thing. They were just living out their lives in this reality, doing their thing. And like, a couple of them noticed me too, and they looked up and they waved at me. They're like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And they're like excited to see me, but I was just passing by. I was just passing through. They lived there. They inhabited this place, and they were like, they were with their families, and they had their like. It's like a. That's what it very much seemed like. Is that this is a real place that exists parallel to this cosmos. We can't perceive it with our physical senses, but just because we can't perceive it doesn't mean it's not real. Like, we can't perceive the vast majority of the electromagnetic spectrum, like infrared, X-rays. We can't see these things, but they're real, and they're all around us constantly. And likewise, there are these other realms that exist in a way beyond anything our physical human perceptual faculties can tune us into, but they're real, and they exist independently and autonomously. At least that's my sense that I now have. Through DMT, my perspective now is that, again, this physical universe is like the tiniest tip of an iceberg, of an infinite iceberg. And there's infinite other realms and dimensions and layers to existence beyond what we can immediately perceive.
Yeah, I think my take on that, or what you just mentioned, which, again, you may as well have just been describing one of my own experiences, and I think probably a lot of people will be able to relate to it. But yeah, again, I kind of had it explained to me by one of these beings, which again is just bonkers that you can receive such clear, like, not verbal, but sort of almost like telepathic instruction. But it's
Yeah.
very, again, you don't have to sort of fill in any gaps, or you know, it's just beamed straight into your pineal gland. But and I think it ties into what you said earlier about the feeling of home, because
Mm.
that's how it was kind of explained to me, was like, this is the sort of, you know, the original state of things, this kind of like this pure consciousness existence, and just all these conscious beings just in this place. And that what we are doing here, the sort of the bodies that we're in now, we are kind of like scouts in matter. We like are fragments of this who've like broken off to sort of explore and sort of and gain some other experiences that you can only have as like pieces of matter. And when we die, we'll go back and we'll sort of upload all that, you know, your Jonas experience and my Rob experience will upload back into the sort of universal consciousness, and it will be better for it. You know, it will be,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll share those experiences. And I mean, yeah, at some one of the sort of welcome parties I had when I got there, it was like saying, you know, welcome home, welcome back. You know, it's so good to see you again. And I know, thank you for your children. You know, you've made even more life, and it's just gonna. And I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit,
Wow.
this is just
Wow.
absolutely mega.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, incredible parallels between both of our experiences, apparently. But were you just about to say something?
No, man, no. I was just kind of reminiscing on that the kind of that sort of, yeah, that feeling of that sort of that connectedness and that home, and that it's a very I think when you first do it, it's a startling sort of set of feelings. This kind of this realization of like, actually, that was something I wanted to mention. Did you get that kind of impression of when you were like that? Well, first of all, that you've been here before, and like, oh my God, like, how did I not realize it was going to be like this? Was it like this overwhelming familiarity?
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's like each experience that I had with DMT, it's a little bit different, and I'm shown kind of like a different facet of the infinite faces of life itself. But yeah, absolutely. I've had this experience on a number of occasions where, like, immediately upon breaking through, it's like the crowd goes wild. He's back. He's back, everyone. Whoa! What's up, Jonas?
Jonas!
Yeah, you're doing so awesome over there. Keep going, like cheering me on, and almost like they're like these spectators behind the scenes. Like I'm in the middle of some kind of movie production, and like they're all watching on and cheering me on and cheering all of us on. I don't know. It is like a strange, bizarre part of the experience, but it is this idea of being welcomed back. They're like, oh, welcome back. It's so awesome to see you again. Like there is some familiarity with these other realms, like on a very, very deep level of our being. Something remembers, something like sees this and says like, whoa, I've been here before. I'm familiar with this realm somehow. I don't know. And I think it is like this idea of oneness, that we are all kind of, as you were saying a little bit, like we're these like seemingly fragmented expressions of infinite unity, and we've all emerged from the same infinite source and like entered into this unbelievable game of multiplicity in order to learn and grow and play and love and expand and awaken on the road back to oneness. We've never actually really left oneness, but in this like human this idea of being like a fractured piece or a separate entity is a very like deep part of this human experience, because there's so much to learn through the suffering that comes out of that isolation, that feeling that like I'm here by myself, and awakening from this illusion of ego to this idea of greater unity. But I think that's part of why there is this feeling of familiarity, is that like it's almost like in these experiences, sometimes it almost felt like I was becoming aware of the trajectory of my soul, like over multiple lifetimes. And again, like I don't take all of this at face value. I'm not saying all of this is guaranteed 100% real, but it did feel like on a number of these occasions, like I was revisiting a place I had been to before that was a spiritual realm of existence that may or may not have been the place that some sort of afterlife where we go after death, where I was also aware of not just other beings that I had known before, but also other lifetimes that I had lived before, like prior lifetimes, not even in a human body, not even in a physical body, in like all types of weird and bizarre like expressions or manifestations of this underlying this I don't know, the fundamental fabric of life itself, the divine reality that's infinitely diverse. It's all one. It's infinitely diverse.
Yeah, I think just to sort of like put a bookend on all this sort of DMT talk, so tie it back to the topic at the beginning. But it is, I think for me, it is healing in some way. I think if I had to sort of try and put a category around it, and again, I'm only talking loose categories. I don't want to, try and be authoritarian. I think it's spiritually healing. There is 100%. There is a spiritual experience within DMT, in my opinion, and that in itself can be extremely healing. It can have extremely positive changes. But again, I would stand by this thing that if you are looking to heal from trauma, then other tools are sort of better. And I think the phrase that came to mind when we're talking about, like, we sort of DMT and how how it connects this place, which I don't, for those of us who like you using the internet at the beginning, where we had like dial-up modems and stuff like that. I think of DMT as it's a spiritual modem. It's like spiritual technology. It is a way to dial in to this place, the place that we came from, and just get that pick me up, get that sort of yay Rob, yay Jonas, keep going guys, and that in itself, I think, is something that can be very lacking in our sort of modern lives, and sometimes you just need that taste of the divine, and it can change your life around. But I just wanted to sort of shift gears a little bit and move on to ayahuasca, which people, again, for those who are not particularly experienced with it, tend to sort of make the assumption that it's just longer DMT. It's just DMT but stretched out over a few hours. Whereas I think it's got its completely separate character, and its its own things there. So I mean, I gather that you've had your own sort of experiences with ayahuasca, and I just wanted to ask a little bit about that. And was it a kind of an exploration that brought you there, or was it like a particular healing thing that you were looking to get from it?
Yeah. Well, I've only had one ayahuasca experience, actually. I would definitely like to do more, but it was an incredibly beautiful, amazing experience. I had arrived to ayahuasca after I had already had like a number of these DMT experiences. So I was very much aware of the power and the sacredness of this experience, and was really approaching it not from a place of healing, but just curiosity and like a desire to explore and discover and see what this had to share or to teach me. And yeah, I agree that it's not at all like, I mean, there are many similarities with DMT, but I don't think the best way to describe it would be like an extended DMT experience, because their DMT is like, has its own kind of unique nature in some ways. In ayahuasca, I mean, there's many different ways to brew it, but there's all tons of different alkaloids and, different, like, this is a concoction that offers a very unique experience. And I would say that for me, the difference was that, like, when I before that ayahuasca experience, when I had been taking DMT, I was having a lot of these out of body breakthrough experiences where it quite literally felt like the essence of my being, or like the pure consciousness, had left, was traveling outside of the body. In the ayahuasca experience, I didn't experience that whatsoever. Like, I felt very firmly grounded in my physical body the entire time, but it felt like all that divinity, like all that divine energy from those transcendent realms, had just absolutely flooded my, like, every cell of my being. So, like, instead of going there and visiting those realms, like, it all just like was pouring through me in such a beautiful, and it felt like the life force in my being had just been turned up to maximum volume. Like, I was just on fire, and I just wanted to. It was really like my heart felt like it was exploding in a good way. But it was just like my heart center was just like pulsing with energy, and I just wanted to run out into the world and tell everyone I love them. Like, I just wanted to give everyone a hug. I wanted to hug the whole planet. But that was a very important experience for me as well, because it took me a while. Like, my experiences with DMT were so astonishing and so amazingly incredible that I wanted to keep going back and exploring those realms. But after a certain while, I realized that I am here in this body, in this lifetime. Like, we are here in this physical body for a reason. This is my perspective, and it was really DMT that showed me this. But my subjective opinion is that I consciously chose somehow to participate in this experience. Like, I came into this lifetime knowing all the challenges and all the, like, struggles that came with being a human being in a human body. And yet I still signed up for it because there's something, like, incredibly sacred and important and unbelievably amazing about this opportunity to be a human being here on Earth at this time in history. It's truly incredible. But ayahuasca was kind of like, was a reminder of this. Like, it's not about trying to figure out how to use DMT or any psychedelics to get there. There is no there. We're here. We're here for a reason. And more important is to figure out how to use these experiences, how to bring all that wisdom and all that new knowledge and all that love, those expanded states of awareness, how to bring that here. And ayahuasca was showing me that with just this experience of pure love, of just flowing love. What about you? How do you see kind of the I don't know. How
the separation between DMT and ayahuasca. I mean, I went to ayahuasca to specifically to heal from some trauma, and I kind of went there, and this, ties back to what I said at the beginning about around bad trips. Fully expecting hell, like absolute sort of but prepared to pay that price to work through some of these issues that have been bugging me for most of my adult life. So, and I would say that I have had some of the worst experiences of my life on ayahuasca. Like, some of it has just been brutal beyond belief, to the point where I thought I was losing my mind. And like, this is where I was, I was in the jungles in Peru, and if there had been a button next to me, like a teleporter button, which would have just got me back home, like forget this trip, fuck the jungle, fuck Peru, fuck ayahuasca, press this button and you're home, I would have been smashing it. I was like, get me.
I know it all too well.
And the only thing like that was in my mind, like, as I was going through this nightmare experience, was like, I am like a day away from anywhere. Like, even if I quit now, I want to get home, I'm looking like 4 hours on a boat, like another 2 hours on a minibus. Even that's just to get me to some city in Peru, like, so it can be brutal. And I always make that point to anybody who's like saying, like, particularly when people are coming up with like, we just need to give everyone in the world, we just need to give them ayahuasca. I'm like, no, absolutely not. This is like fucking not for everyone. It's brutal, but it can also be incredibly beautiful. I've had some of the most I mean, I'm not going to say some of the most transformative experiences of my life in ayahuasca ceremonies. It's just been incredible, where I've just realized truths about myself, sort of just very, very simple insights. Not like cosmic revelations of the galaxy, just like, dude, look after yourself. It's like, oh my God, I just so needed to hear that from myself right then.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just a beautiful experience, but it's very definitely not for everyone. And I don't mean that in kind of like any kind of elitist stuff, but I think that's true of all psychedelics, that you have to have this kind of fortitude that we talked about earlier. But with ayahuasca, I think even more so, because it can just the craziness of what's going on, combined with like the body load and the sort of the puking and the shitting and the people screaming around you and stuff. It can, it's like semi-controlled insanity, just in like a room. But I love it. I absolutely love. I mean, that experience has been life-changing for me. But
yeah,
Jesus Christ, it can be unpleasant.
Well, that goes back to the idea that in a lot of cases, some of the most challenging experiences are the most transformative. And there's this kind of idea in the psychedelic community that entheogens, plant medicines, they don't show you what you want to see. They show you what you need to see. They show you what you need to see, because like going through these these experiences, which can be excruciating, can be like the most intense, like challenging, just intense discomfort. And like what you're describing, you want to smash that button and just get out of here right now. I have been there before, and I really like, in the moment, it's just it's overwhelming. But navigating that challenge, there's always some immense learning or some immense growth to be gleaned from that. It's like, I think that's really a metaphor for life in general. Like that's a super concentrated lesson for life in general. Like all these challenges that we face and navigate in our life and in the psychedelic experience, they change us. They're catalysts for our growth and evolution. And more often than not, we come out the other side with a new perspective, a more expanded capacity to navigate similar challenges in the future, I think.
Do you think that might be part of why, do you think everybody fully realizes how challenging they can be? Because there's a lot of sort of material out there, like, psychedelics are awesome, DMT, death by astonishment, all this, all this kind of stuff. We're talking about like purely the amazing part of it. But the challenge part of it is a very real outcome, like a highly probable outcome. Do you think this is something that's fully appreciated by sort of the world at large? Or I always personally try and bring that into the conversation, if I'm on like a forum like Reddit or something like that, and people like, should I try ayahuasca? And I'm like, yeah, you should try it if you're ready for a night of hell. And think about what that means. Think about how bad it can get. However bad you think it can be worse. It can be infinitely worse. Are you ready for that? If you are, go for it. If you accept that terms, go for it. But if you're just looking for, the only outcome you're prepared to accept is awesome, then maybe look elsewhere, because it can fuck you up.
That's true. It's a really good point. I think you're right that there is kind of this tendency to paint these experiences or these substances in a certain way that glorifies them. And I mean, in my perspective, they deserve the glory. Like they are that awesome. They are that incredible. But wrapped up in that whole package, you take both extremes. Like the most euphoric, liberating experiences of direct encounters with God is what it subjectively feels like, with the infinite source of life itself. Now take the other extreme of that. See, like the DMT experience or the psychedelic experience in general, is oftentimes so bizarre that it doesn't seem to be playing by any rules. Like, it's going to serve you up something. And I do have this conviction that whatever it serves up, it is like somehow helping the unfolding, the evolution of your consciousness and of the greater collective that we're all a part of somehow. But yeah, a lot of times that looks like facing our deepest fears, or, you know, facing really, really challenging emotional experiences, deeply held childhood traumas, or, you know, these intense feelings of shame, guilt, rage, sadness. A lot of these experiences that we tend to just really bury deep down inside and try to push away and ignore and pretend like they're not there, almost always without fail, at some point in the psychedelic experience, in the psychedelic endeavor, those will come to the surface, because only through bringing those into the light of awareness and transmuting them into healing and growth can we then progress somehow on our path of evolution. Like, there's no, in my perspective, there's no spiritual awakening without healing, and there's no healing without also spiritual awakening. Like, they're interwoven. As one is happening, so is the other. And psychedelics are like right at the like nexus point, like right at the crossing point of both of them. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredibly important point that, as you say, you really do. It's really important to be aware of the challenges and the incredible difficulty that these experiences may bring, while at the same time recognizing and appreciating the value in those experiences if dealt with in a way that where you have enough support, enough assistance in integrating and navigating this in a healthy way that is not totally disruptive for your life, but is something that is a challenge that you can meet and move through.
Yeah, I was reminded of I don't know, have you seen the documentary about the guy who the kind of free solo mountain climber, the guy who sort of climbs
Alex
the mountain?
Honnold,
Yeah. And you know, when he's doing that, we talk about, you know, these outcomes. He could have come off the wall. He could have, you know, that's the challenge that he gives himself is to, he climbs the wall and you challenge yourself and you come out of it just a better person, and the people around can just look at you and just think, wow, that's just fucking incredible. But he could have come off, and he must have known that was a possible outcome, but he chose to do it anyway. And I think this is what, you know, what I'm kind of getting at with around the psychedelic thing. I think people, there's more value going into it with that full awareness. Like, yeah, okay, this can be a bad time, but I'm up for that. I'm ready to face this mountain. I'm ready to face this challenge. I'm ready. If there is a darkness in me, then I want to understand that darkness and work with it. And I think that's something I would try and like put in the psyche of anyone who's thinking of trying sort of psychedelics and doing exploration. You just don't flinch from the day. I mean, you don't necessarily have to go sort of craving it or whatever, but just accept it as an outcome, and then just be prepared to sort of to work with it. You know, because when you get those, you know, the storm is turbulent, but when it breaks and the sea is calm, that's the sort of the, you know, the beauty on the ocean is that's.
Well said. Well said. Well said. I completely agree. And like, what a beautiful perspective that you just laid out to bring into our everyday life in general. Again, like tying this back to this is truth. This is wisdom for life in general. Recognizing that in the times of our greatest challenges and suffering, there's also some of the greatest opportunity for a quantum leap in our evolution. Like, every time that we face a challenge, this is a tremendous opportunity for us to level up in like amazing and awesome and new ways. It's like the saying that it takes friction to polish the gem, you know? And like all of these difficult experiences, like that's a lot of friction. And in that moment, it's not necessarily pleasant, but those challenges change us. They help transform us. And that idea is concentrated in the psychedelic experience. But very important point.
Yeah, and I think that's the value in what sort of guys like sort of you and me and sort of, other people in certain communities can do, is just to put that kind of realistic boots on the ground voice to it. I mean, this is certainly what I'm trying to do. My kind of mission statement with my channel is that there's plenty of hippies, and there's plenty of so there's plenty of people talking all the sort of like the peace, love, and beautiful flowers and stuff like that. But I want to talk about the stuff that's the stuff that can have a boots on the ground positive experience that can take, a lot of people kind of say that, life is suffering and stuff like that. And I think that's true to some extent. It certainly can be. So I want the stuff that works. I want to get involved in the stuff that's going to help bring about positive changes in me. And I never considered myself to be a spiritual person. I think what you just mentioned about spiritual and healing sort of colliding through psychedelics. And now I would consider myself a spiritual person, and I would consider myself on that kind of path. I would have laughed at myself 10 years ago. I would have called myself, I would have been horrified at what a goddamn, at this fucking man bun. But it's, it just hit me in the face, and and sort of here I am, and I do feel better for it. I feel like a better person. I feel like a better husband. I feel like a better father. I just feel happier in myself. And as I mentioned, that's a desirable state. It's like,
yes.
And I want to share that with as many people as possible without sounding like a complete lunatic, which I definitely have done. Have you had that kind of experience, when you first got into this, where you just kind of like going up to people like, listen, I've got to tell you this thing?
Oh yeah.
You had those?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, still, I think probably most of my friends and a lot of my family members look at my YouTube channel and they just, what are you doing, buddy? What are you talking about? DMT? What? But no, I mean, like you, I've directly experienced how transformative this is. And at the end of the day, if it works, it works. There is not a single doubt in my mind that this has made me a better person with a bigger heart and more love, not only to the world around me, but to myself. Like, being able to offer myself more love and compassion and just be gentle with myself through this often challenging experience of life, that's an unbelievable source of strength and that kind of resilience. And it has transformed me in a very, very profound way. Like, similar to you, for the first almost 18, 19, 20 years of my life, I would never have considered myself a spiritual or religious person. In fact, I was like I was a stringent atheist. I wasn't even agnostic. I was like purely, strictly materialistic. The brain, consciousness is produced by the brain and all that. And it was really through psychedelics. Like, I credit psychedelics for opening me up to a more like expansive perspective where I'm not locked into one way of seeing the world. I'm open to different possibilities. I'm honest about the fact that I don't know anything. Like, I just don't know. And so I can be open to like different possibilities and just try to accommodate, just be more honest with myself. And I will say that this has also really tuned me into like reconnecting with the sacredness of life. Like, this idea of the intelligence and wisdom of life that we had kind of mentioned earlier, this force that is driving forth the expansion of, like, we look around and the cosmos is infinitely complex, but it's also infinitely harmonious. Like, there's so much harmony that's driving like the trees to burst forth out of the little seeds, and like, like every aspect of life, every passing moment, there's just an incomprehensible level of complexity and harmoniousness in order for this experience to be possible. There's like this incredible, sacred, divine, synchronistic power that is like, it's so miraculous. It's all so miraculous. It's such an incredible mystery. And with this strictly scientific perspective, I was shutting myself off from the magic, the miraculousness of life itself. That all the simple fact that this moment is happening right now is such an astonishing mystery and miracle that, in my perspective, all possibilities are on the table. Like, and that's an expanded state of awareness that's more flexible and less rigid, that only through psychedelics could I have arrived here. Without kind of that catalyst for profound shift to some of my deepest core beliefs, I would still be an atheist, and I would still behave towards myself and towards others in ways that's really not serving the collective wellness. And so it has been. That's the thing. It works. It works. Like, it works in creating profound change. So yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about the sort of people around you, and you know, what's your kind of integration then been? Do you have sort of a good sort of support group around you, and like your friends and family, people who are kind of with you on this journey, or are you still sort of seen as a bit of a weirdo, sort of like, oh God, Jonas, you keep talking about? How has it kind of worked out for you?
I think both. I think I have a great support group, and I'm seen as a weirdo.
Well, that's good, mate. Weirdos are good. I'd say that's probably the same here. Like, I think, you know, I've got my sort of my wife and my family here with me, and I've had my family's extended family's been like super supportive. Even my wife's parents and my sort of parents have just been. We've been completely honest about everything that we're sort of doing and the sort of the benefits, and I think we've been very lucky in that we've had like a lot of support and understanding. And so even like when we've wanted to do things like go to the jungle, you know, we've had people offer to step in as babies, you know, in-laws and stuff to step in as babysitters, with full knowledge that we're going, you know, getting, you know, completely high. But it's, so yeah, I think that sort of integration circle is a key thing. And I think one of the things we talked about in our previous call is that, you know, about what kind of things would be, you know, are necessary to have in place for somebody who's thinking of going on this journey. And I think that's probably one of the more critical things, is having someone you can talk to and relate to, who will not judge you, who's going to listen to you without judgment. And you're going to be talking like a maniac, and sort of things that necessarily going to be making sense, but you're working through these things, you know. And I think that was what was super important for me, just someone who's just going to give you that space, keep you grounded, but, you know, give you enough space to figure these things out in a way that you can just sort of integrate it and and just turn it into a positive experience.
Yeah, well said. And I mean, that was a big part of the reason why I started my YouTube channel in the first place. Actually, like that idea of community and the Psychedelic Avengers, like, that was something I was definitely lacking severely in my life. Like, I had all these unbelievable DMT experiences that changed my life and my entire worldview in a very, very profound and fundamental way, that I was like so incredibly fascinated by and just like excited about. And trying to communicate that with the people around me was a tremendous challenge. And for a long time, it felt very, very isolating. And that only compounds the challenge, you know? Like, you're trying to figure out this whole, like, you've just been to the heavenly divine realms, and now I'm back in everyday life, and I have to go to work tomorrow, and, like, you know,
go work it out, monkey.
pay the bills and whatnot. Like, what? You know, it can be like very like hard to just to go through this process of integration. And ultimately, like, integration it comes from within. It is an inner process that is as fundamental as just sitting with it, just sitting with the experience, giving yourself time and space to just be and let the experience really like sink deeply into your being, so that you're kind of like your future decisions and actions and intentions are guided with the wisdom that you have gleaned from this experience. But like in working through that stuff, I would agree with you that probably the most critical factor is having someone, at least one person. A community is ideal, but having at least one person, just as you said, who's not judging you while you're ranting and raving and sounding like a lunatic, who's coming from a place of love, who's just giving you space to kind of like rebound and like creating a safe container for you to really like go into the weirdness of what you've just experienced and explore the implications about how this is affecting your mind and your heart and your life and your actions and all these things. That's so important.
Yeah, and I think another part of that as well is to for let people to understand to do their own journey, and not to sort of, not to go into it with the expectations of, oh, I'm going to see the pyramids, I'm going to see the pink rainbows and stuff like this. I've seen like a lot of people on retreats clearly bummed out because it's not gone quite the way they thought they were going to go. They thought they were going to get, it just all going to land in their lap on the first night. And because I think some kind of like the way the world is today, the kind of like the Instagram world where everything just has to be shit hot, everything's just perfect on day one. People are kind of a little bit scared to just say, man, that fucking sucked. That was a really dark experience. And then by doing that, being able to work through it and sort of, get yourself ready to sort of face some of that stuff. And I think that's a lesson for the world today, is like, don't be afraid to sort of talk about the bad, the grimness or the badness or darkness, and it doesn't all have to be sort of like picture perfect, instantly.
True. Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. And I mean, I've seen this as well, like working as a psychedelic facilitator myself. I've seen on a number of occasions where people are really, really hoping for some kind of like mystical, incredible experience, like some spiritual, divine revelation. And that's very much a possibility. Like the potential is there. However, if said individual, instead of this spiritual experience, they're really going into the shit, like they're going deep into like the muck of all the stuff that they have going on, like all of the pain or the trauma or whatever it may be, then like there's an incredible amount of resistance to that experience, because no, I don't want that. I want that, like I want the beautiful, shiny experience with all the fireworks. I don't want to, like, without not realizing that moment that the way to the fireworks is through all the shit. Like you can't run away from it. You can't go around it. You can. It'll always come back, unless you move through it. And which brings up another key idea, is this idea of resistance in the psychedelic experience. I think that this is such a key idea, because when the idea of bad trips or challenging trips, I don't see bad trips as bad trips. I see bad trips as challenging trips until resistance comes into play, and then it cycles. It can really spiral downwards into an increasingly bad experience. This is maybe one of the most key mindsets, or like not techniques but approaches for the psychonaut, for a psychedelic adventurer, is the relationship navigating resistance. Because anxiety is going to come up, fear is going to come up, all these difficult, like discomfort is going to arise, and all these difficult experiences. The more that you can, and again, this is a life lesson in general, I think, the more that you can kind of surrender to that experience, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of coming into full conscious alignment with this present moment, just allowing life to be as it is, just allowing the experience to flow and move through you just as it is, however it looks, however difficult or unpleasant that may be, the more that we can just come into alignment and let go of this resistance in the body, like all the tension and resistance in the body, just like relaxing and settling into presence and allowing the psychedelic experience to be exactly as it is, then that's like the best way to just like fast track yourself through the difficult experiences and the challenging experiences, and like move into a place that's really beautiful and amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I used to struggle with that so bad, just that exact thing. And I think what was useful for me is when people talk a lot about surrender, and I think instantly people think, like you say, it means give up, and I prefer to sort of frame it as more as stop fighting. Not you're not give up, you just stop, like I said, let go of that resistance and just sort of like go into it. And I used to have to make a very conscious effort to just open up my posture, because I would find myself sort of doing this, and by doing so I was manifesting my own resistance to things. And I would see something I didn't like over there, so I'd start looking over there, and then it's kind of like just let it go and just accept what's going to happen. And by doing that, I can completely change the characteristic of a lot of my experiences, because I used to fight against it so hard. I was like, particularly when I first got into ayahuasca, I was absolutely sure I was not going to be sick. I was not going to be one of these guys going to be sick. I was going to fight it, and I just made the night shit. I just like it was. I was just all night for like 3 hours, just doing big deep breaths, like holding my stomach, like just cowering, and like I made myself into a victim, and it was it was awful. It just this whole thing, but. Surrender, it's a tricky one to explain, because when you're in it and that anxiety is building, it's so real, it's so visceral that it's very tricky to talk somebody down from that. And I've been on some retreats where, man, I have heard like blood curdling screams, like people. I have heard people experience terror like I have never heard in the waking world, like just screams from the bottom of people's soul. It's so real and so in that moment. And again, this is not to sort of paint a picture of it being all bad, but man, I think people need to be like aware of these possible outcomes. And I think by doing that you can navigate that space better and sort of be in that grounded mode and that accepted way, and sort of accept your demons, accept your darkness, and accept these things going on, and that will just help you move through it and move to the euphoria, move to the tranquil place.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm conscious of your time, mate, and I think on my own sort of time is also coming close. So I think this might be a good place to put a cap on it. But I just want to say, Jonas, man, I have loved this conversation.
Me too.
I definitely need to do it again, dude.
Yes.
I think we could talk about this stuff like a lot.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you just want? I mean, obviously, we'll give a shout out to sort of both of our channels. But you mentioned earlier about you being a sort of facilitator. Is there any sort of like organizations or anything you want to give a shout out to? Or?
Oh yeah, thanks for asking. Well, the best way to find me for anyone interested is through my YouTube channel. It's called Cosmic Consciousness with Jonas.
Great channel, by the way. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, thank you. I am also at the moment, actually in 2 weeks, I'm going down to Jamaica to begin working at Myco Meditations, which is a psilocybin retreat center in Jamaica where psilocybin is legal. And so... this is a space that I've been working kind of informally in for a long time now, and now it's starting to become more formal. But thanks so much, and man, it was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I definitely am looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, for the next time that the Psychedelic Avengers will assemble. So Jonas, cheers, mate. Love this, and mate, let's arrange something soon. And if I don't speak to you before. You do shoot off to Jamaica. Have an awesome time, mate. I wish you all the best for the work that you're doing out there. I'm sure you'll be an awesome facilitator.
Thank you so much.